Okay, there are a few things that we must know about Japan in order to understand the historical background of this island nation state. Number one is, what is the geographical background? Britain and Japan, okay, two nations, Great Britain, United Kingdom, and Japan are the only two island nations that were able to create an empire. So Japan is an island nation. Being an island has its peculiarities. In a sense of geography, an island allows a country to be isolated, yet at the same time being near. So near enough to receive outside influence, but yet far enough to modify this outside influence to suit local conditions. So Japan, for hundreds of years, will accept ideas and culture from outside of Japan near enough in the sense that Japan to China, okay, you can accept Buddhism. Buddhism will go to Japan via the kingdom of Pekchek in Korea. When it goes to Japan, it is able to suit the local conditions of Japan. So, what is important about Japan? It is near enough and also far enough. So you have two oxymoronic statements. And in Japan, you have four different islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. The most important island is Honshu Island. Okay, Japan is a very topographically rugged island. So the whole of Japan is basically mountainous. It's a mountainous country. If you want to look at history, the similar country to Japan will be Greece. Also mountainous and with volcanoes and earthquake. So Japan is volcanic and earthquake prone. So the last part about the geographical background about Japan is that Japan is, until today, a homogeneous nation, a nation of very little immigrants, no need of assimilation. And so Japanese people from the past until today, they have been a homogeneous nation. They do not have to go through, for example, like in Malaysia, multi-ethnic, multi-religious. Okay, in Japan, it is a single ethnic. It could be multi-religions, but it is a single ethnic state. And the Japanese, just like the Jewish people, they always consider themselves as special, in the sense that in Japan, they consider themselves as descendants of the sun goddess or Amaterasu. Okay, now, how do we know about Japanese history? There are ways to learn Japanese history. Traditionally, the Japanese sources for history will be the Kojiki and the Nihon Shingi. So the records of the ancient matters and the chronicles of Japan. Both of these sources are most important sources when you want to know about early Japan. If you want to know about the royal family, the imperial family, or you want to know about the Shinto religion, you want to know about the creation of Japan, these two chronicles, the records of ancient matters and the Nihon Shonshigi, Nihongi, will be the most important sources for Japanese history. At the same time, you can also source Japanese history from neighboring states. For example, China. So in China, you have the history of the Han Dynasty Chronicles, and the Book of the Wei. Okay, for example, the Wei Dynasty Kingdom. Okay, they have also written about their relations with a next door kingdom. Okay, Japan, in the eyes of the Chinese, the Chinese tend to look at the Japanese at the lower perspective. So the Chinese traditionally have looked at Japan and called them, for example, they use the word term wa, which means dwarfs. And another way to look at Japan is through archaeological evidence. So in Japan, you have burial mounds, you have temples, and you have shrines all over Japan. Some of them have, of course, been reconstructed because you have to remember Japan is volcanic and earthquake prone. So a lot of the heritage of the past, many of them have been reconstructed over the years. Okay, a very good example for archaeological discovery is, for example, the Kofun burial mounds. Okay, the Kofun burial mounds is in the middle of the city of Osaka. Okay, can you imagine the whole burial ground? The archaeological site is in the site in the shape of a keyhole. Have you ever wondered why? Okay, but whatever we know about the coffin burial grounds, okay, the Japanese government do not allow archaeological excavation to be conducted in the coffin burial mounds because it is considered sacred. Okay, let's look at this short video clip. Okay, just to say, ancient aliens is speculative history. So this is not authentic history. It's just for the fun of it. Okay, we should ask Yasuke and Tsukasa a little bit more on this. Okay, now the next part on Japanese early Japan is the idea of Buddhism and Shinto. Okay, so in early Japan, from early Japan, classical Japan, and in medieval Japan, even until today, there are two religions that will shape Japanese history. One is a native religion, Shintoism. If you look at the characters, Shinto in kanji, which means Shen Dao, the way of the gods. So Shen Dao is basically a method, a religion that is almost similar to Taoism. That means the way of the gods, or in this sense, the way of the kami. Okay, so in Shintoism, there is no specific theology. It's not an ethical religion. It's not a moralistic religion. It has a very optimistic outlook on a lot of things. Whereas Buddhism is an imported religion. So Buddhism is an Indian religion, but Buddhism did not come directly from India, but Buddhism came from China via the kingdom of Pekchek, a kingdom in Korea. So Buddhism allows the adaptation of Shintoism, and it more or less provides the philosophical and the afterlife of Japanese society. It is a very intellectual religion, but at the same time, it also provides a sense of hope and joy for the lay people. So let's say in Shintoism, they do not talk about what is going to happen after a person's die. So Buddhism allows that kind of joy or that kind of hope when a person passes away. Let's watch this video clip.
If you Google Buddhism in Japan, you can see that it tells you approximately 34% of Japanese identify as Buddhist and 90% of Japanese practice Shinto. So, what's going on here? The people who practice both religions is called Shinbutsu Shugo, which translates to syncretism of Kami and Buddhas. Religious syncretism exhibits blending of two or more religious belief systems into a new system, or the incorporation into a religious tradition of beliefs from unrelated traditions. So, why did the Japanese integrate its own Shinto religion with Buddhism? That's a really interesting question, and part of it goes back to the 6th century when Buddhism was introduced from China in the Asuka period following maritime and overland routes along the Silk Road. Rather than discarding the old belief system, the Japanese tried to reconcile the two, assuming both were true. As a consequence, Buddhist temples were attached to local Shinto shrines. By the time Buddhism entered Japan, it was already syncretic, having adapted to and amalgamated with other religions and cultures in India, China, and the Korean Peninsula. There are 3 reasons why the Japanese fused Shinto with Buddhism. First, the conflict between the two religions was political and not religious in nature. The court wanted to establish a system in which the existing clans could be consolidated. Buddhism offered both moral and intellectual benefits which Shinto lacked, and the construction of new religions syncretically helps reduce interreligious tension and enmity. Syncretism has also helped to create cultural compromise. It provides an opportunity to bring beliefs, values, and customs from one cultural tradition into contact with and to engage different cultural traditions. Second, it was hoped that the adoption of Buddhism would be looked on favorably by the more advanced neighboring cultures of Korea and China, and enhance Japan's reputation as a rising civilized nation in East Asia. Lastly, Shinto was not particularly challenged by the arrival of Buddhism. Shinto, with its emphasis on the here and now of this life, left a significant gap regarding what happens after death, and Buddhism was able to complete the religious picture for most people.
Okay, so that's about Shinto and Buddhism, two religions that go very well, but they also can be rivals in Japanese history. Now we'll go to the founding of the royal family. Okay, actually, before the Yamato imperial lineage, there are actually earlier Japanese historical periods. For example, the Jomon, the Yayoi, and the Kofun. But for our class, we will simply look at Japanese history by looking at the start of the imperial Yamato lineage. So the Yamato imperial lineage represents the founding of the first Japan, the Emperor of Japan. So the Yamato clan is the most powerful clan in Japan, and it is the clan of the imperial family. So if you want to use the word dynasty, then it will be the Yamato dynasty. And in Japan, there is only one dynasty, the Yamato dynasty, that stretches from the first emperor of Emperor Jimmu until today, Emperor Reva or Emperor Naruhito. Okay, so the Yamato imperial lineage, okay, traces its descendants, its descendancy from the sun goddess. So Ameta Ratsu. Ameta Ratsu is the founding personality of Japan. So Ameta Ratsu is the daughter of Iwa Nagi and Iwazami, from the story of Nihon Shingi. So you have Ameta Ratsu as the sun goddess, and the sun goddess, the first emperor, claims lineage from the sun goddess. Through the sun goddess, the first emperor of Japan, he is given a few so-called alat kebesaran. So the how should we put it, imperial, we'll find the term later, okay, where it is the mirror, the sword, and one more. Okay, now let's go to the next part. So the Yamato dynasty, okay, the Yamato heartland is around here, okay, Kyoto, around the middle part of Honshu Island. Okay, the most important historical Yamato personality is Prince Shotoku. Prince Shotoku has a very important role in Japanese history, as he was regarded as the person who introduced Buddhism to Japan. So Prince Shotoku, he offered a 17-point constitution that became the founding document for the Japanese state. So Prince Shotoku basically laid the foundation of the Japanese state. And in the Japanese state, what you will see is the merging of a few different cultures and religion. So Japan, the founding of Japan is basically around the time of Tang Dynasty, and you have from similarly to the Tang Dynasty, you have Confucianism, you have Buddhism, but unlike China, two things did not make it to Japan. Two important Chinese Confucian ideas did not make it to Japan. One is the imperial meritocratic bureaucracy. In Japan, although Confucianism play an important role, there are no imperial examination, there is no imperial bureaucracy. Second is that there is no theory of the mandate of heaven. So in Japan, we have seen that from the very beginning there are change in the shoguns, but the dynasty do not change. So in Japanese history, the shogunate can change, but the Japanese imperial family do not change. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll go to the next part.